Welcome back to Collectively Unhinged Therapy Talk. Today's episode, man, I don't know. I'm not feeling the script, Courtney. We always do a script for the beginning. It says, oh, it's a spicy one. I would never say that in real life, guys. I just want to point out, I would never be like, this one's spicy. But anyway, back to what I was trying to get out. We're going to talk about the unspoken impact of dad, which actually, now that I think about it, it is spoken about, right? Which is interesting how women's issues tend to relate to men sometimes, right? Like the daddy issues conversation, right? So we're gonna talk about daddy issues today. I like that title for the podcast better. What do you think, Courtney?
Okay, well, that's like the segment 1 title. What are daddy issues really? But hey, let's just go ahead and switch it. We're switching it now. What are daddy issues really?
I like that much better. I feel like more people can relate to
that. Which, I mean, by the way, daddy issues is not technically a clinical term, right? It's more of like a pop culture way of describing, you know, these issues that we do have, these unresolved emotional issues or needs stemming from your relationship with your father or your father figure. But no, it is not technically considered a clinical term.
You had to specify that. You've been diagnosed with daddy issues. Okay, so anyway, what are daddy issues? Courtney, can you tell us what you consider to be daddy issues? Because since it's not a clinical term, I don't know that there's a set definition for what daddy issues looks like.
Right. No, there isn't. It can point to a lot of different things. It's really about how it shows up for you, right? So it can look different for different people. It can be patterns of attachment, how you attach to people in your current life, any emotional wounds that you might have from your past, maybe unmet needs that you had from your father, and how they impact or ripple through your adult lives, especially within the relationships that you have with others, maybe boundaries or lack of boundaries that you set with others, and ultimately how you view yourself, your own self-worth. That's how I think describe it.
You made something that's not clinical at all into something very, very clinical. Good job. You have earned your license. But yeah, I agree. I mean, like even, you know, you touched up on a lot of it, but it really is, I see it a lot in like relationships, right? Like, whether you're like, you tend to be more codependent, whether you tend to have more of like an anxious attachment style, even fear of abandonment comes up a lot for my clients, really, where, you know, dad wasn't in the picture and now they're like
True.
afraid of upsetting their friends or of having a tough conversation with their significant other because they're afraid that that person is just gonna like leave, especially if they had a dad that was like in and out and would be like, no, yeah, for sure, I'm gonna be there, and then wouldn't show up to like pick them up and stuff, which horrifying. I feel very, very, not that you know, it's not like a like I feel bad thing, but I think it's one of the hardest things in the world to deal with, to like just want love from a parent and to have a parent that doesn't see the importance of giving that love and support and really giving them the benefit of the doubt. Hopefully they're not sitting there thinking about how this might impact their kid in the future, because I feel like that would add a whole level, right? If they're like, oh, this is really going to mess my kid up in the future, but I don't care, I'm not going to go pick them up. Like, I feel like that's worse than if they just didn't realize the damage they were causing.
No, for sure. And again, it, like I said earlier, it can look different for everyone. You can have those absentee fathers that are just really, maybe they're there, but they're not really there. You can have the ones that are maybe there, but they're also very emotionally distant types of fathers. You can have the type that are overly critical and just like have something to say about like absolutely every single thing that you do. Or you can even have like the ones that are overly involved in your lives to the point that like there's really blurred boundaries when it does come to that, and you have to, it's kind of like forced self-reliance on them as a result of that, like this idea of you can't do any of this without me, and making you feel, and again sometimes this comes later on in life, but sometimes having this idea of that you can't be independent, you can't rely on yourself, because like that was kind of the dynamic that was set up for you early on.
Yeah, and also that's not even
So
including like some of the really intense topics where we have, you know, I had to really, this is in Miami. I mean, I really wanted to say the papis, but really we should say the dads. The dads that don't have good emotional regulation, where there's like, you know, verbal abuse, physical abuse, and it goes both ways, right? Like domestic violence can definitely come from the woman, and not as often, but like it happens, right? But, or from both, right? You hear a lot of like relationships where like dad is like punching holes in the wall, and then mom throws a I don't know, a frame, and like things are breaking in front of the kids. Like that's gonna have a long lasting effect for sure. But you know, for men more than women, not all men. But you know, it's emotional regulation. Emotional regulation is a little harder because it's just like not taught in society. It's kind of frowned upon. Like I've even heard people be like, "Oh, he cried in front of me. What a turn off." And it's like, girl, that is a turn on. Like your man knows how to express himself. He's not out here trying to flip his car because somebody embarrassed him. He's like, I feel embarrassed, not angry, right? So I don't know, but back to the point because I am straying off completely. They're, you know, in relationships, right? Like it does happen where people will say my dad was just angry. I would tell my dad I was sad or upset, or I just needed somebody to talk to, and his immediate reaction was anger. And you hear this a lot with men. I don't know if you hear this in your clients, but my male clients, you know, they'd be like, I tried to talk to my dad about something that made me feel really sad, and he said I was weak, and he said I was dumb for crying, and he said I shouldn't feel that way, and men don't feel that way. And that's like a little bit of that toxic masculinity that they're trying to pass on. I don't know if you've ever heard that from anybody though.
oh no, for sure, like 1,000%. In my male clients, it's very much, well, first and foremost, let's just even, and this is like probably a whole other topic when it comes to our men, but first and foremost, I would say the majority of men that I receive in couples therapy, or like couples therapy or individual therapy, will come in already guarded and be like, I wasn't into this idea of even coming, like I'm very like, like hesitant about the idea of therapy to begin with. That like I get so much. Thankfully, I'm able to like the majority of the time really establish a good relationship to the point that we can actually get some traction going. But yes, that is something that I think comes up a lot, is this stereotypical perception of what it means to be a man, to be a husband, to be a father, and how you always have to like have this certain persona or perception of like, yeah, like I have to carry everything on my shoulders and not show any sort of vulnerability or sadness or embarrassment, because that's not what it means to be a man.
Yeah, and
I
I
see
like that
that
you
so much.
mentioned the word vulnerability because even, let me take it a step back. I have some male clients that I absolutely enjoy working with. They have like really opened themselves up to be like emotional and vocal and vulnerable in the sessions. But what they always say without fail is, I do not feel comfortable being vulnerable with other people. And when they're talking about relationships, they're like, man, I feel so dumb. I was so vulnerable with this girl. And I'm like, why does that make you feel dumb? You were both in love. Like, you were together. Like, of course you were going to be vulnerable. Like, relationships end. You can't think back and be
Right.
like, I was so stupid for loving somebody. Like, that's not how life works. But you hear that a lot when it comes to vulnerability. Like men just do not feel comfortable being vulnerable, and I do think it's because
No.
society thinks men don't have emotions, right? Like you always hear women are so emotional. Like I have the hot topic that men actually are much more emotional than women. Like, and they Yeah, like
I would
men are
agree with
more.
you.
I don't know if it's because it could be for a lot of different reasons that maybe we shouldn't get into, but it also I think is maybe it's not even if we really break it down, not even that men are more emotional, is that women have been taught to um I don't want to say like cope with their emotions more, but women are definitely told to tone it down and like everything is a judgment. And so I think women have an easier time expressing themselves and not like reacting in the moment and not being as impulsive. And again, this isn't meant to be all men. This is not like a general statement at all. I don't accuse everybody of being this way. I don't think that's fair, but you do see that more often in men where it tends to be more of like an impulsive reaction because they haven't fully like understood how to manage those emotions in the moment and like don't like bring it in and then have a conversation that's productive afterwards.
Well, yeah, because I think for a lot of times men find anger to be the easiest emotion to express because it's a lot less vulnerable, right? And I think there's even half of the time that men don't even sometimes understand what the underlying emotions are that they're feeling, and how the anger is just that surface level that they feel most comfortable with even being able to express. So half of the time I feel like I'm taking time just talking about like, well, what's underneath the anger, what is truly underneath there, because again, it's this idea that we don't show our emotions, we don't express our emotions, so it builds and builds because we suppress them, and the more we suppress it, the more it builds, and the more we suppress it, and it builds to this point where the only thing that comes out is anger because it has built up so much to the point that it's kind of like forcing itself out of your body through like this explosion of anger. And this is more dramatic in the way that I'm explaining it, but I'm just saying like this is what I see a lot, because at the end of the day, there is that idea of we're not really allowed to show or express our emotions, or this is kind of what is expected on us, whether it's through societal pressures, whether it's through family, whether it's in our relationships, but this is how we have to present
Yeah, and before
ourselves.
we jump into segment two, I did want to point out I have never, not once, needed an emotion wheel with women. Women tend to know what they're feeling. My men, I'm like, here's an emotion wheel. They're like, I didn't know all these emotions existed. I'm like, guys, you gotta
Yep,
know. How are you gonna process what you're feeling? How are you gonna be in tune with what you're feeling? And like really work through what thoughts are coming from it and like actually be happy and okay if you don't even know about the emotions that are out there. It's not just anger. But that's like a side note, right? And again, not all men. I do think that there are men that have like wonderful insight, and they, yeah, and it does depend
for
also
sure.
on like how you've grown up, because I have seen that men who have like sisters and like a very involved mom and a healthy relationship, like they are more able to take a step back and like listen and like know what they're feeling and provide empathy. But that goes back to daddy issues. Men got daddy issues too. This isn't just women,
Yep,
which is, yeah,
yep,
which is why I
a
mentioned the
thousand
whole like
percent.
my male clients like trying to talk to their dad to figure out how to feel, and their dads are like, "Nah, we don't do that. We just don't feel." So that's some daddy issues right there. Okay, go ahead, go ahead.
So then let's talk a little bit about how does this show up in dating and relationships, and even like the way that we have conflict or boundaries with others. I have a great example here already of like, let's say your dad was physically present but emotionally unavailable. Maybe he didn't ask about your feelings, didn't comfort you, or would shut down when you needed that connection. As an adult, you might find yourself dating people who are distant, who are hard to read. And maybe the idea of it is that that feels familiar to you. You know, even if it's painful, it's something familiar and something that you know. Alyssa, what do you think
Yeah,
about that?
absolutely. And I mean, it goes both ways, right? Like, we could either gravitate towards that, or we could be like, man, I really don't want this. Like, I don't want that type of relationship. But yes, of course, it affects us. And it makes us feel like, I hear a lot of clients like say that they don't feel comfortable communicating with their person because they're like, oh, he doesn't want to hear about my feelings. I don't want to overwhelm him. I'm too much. And it's like, girl, you just want to tell him that you're angry that he crashed your car into a tree. What do you mean you're too much? Like, you should be able to express yourself. So I've seen it come up a lot like that, where women, we honestly, all the judgment that is honest, because I do think as a woman, you really can't do anything right in society, and that's so unfortunate. But that's how it presents, right? Like, if you didn't have, let's say, like, as a little girl, right, like a 5-year old, you like scrape your knee and you go up, you run to your dad, and all you want is like a hug. And your dad is like distant and doesn't comfort you and doesn't give you that physical affection. Um, you're gonna feel it in your relationships. Like, you're gonna feel maybe even overly independent to where you're like, I don't want anybody's help. Like, I got this. I don't need help, even if you're drowning. So this can come out in so many different ways. But again, it goes back to that feeling of like, I'm too much. I don't want to be a burden on somebody. I don't want to overwhelm anybody. And it's like, girl, this man chose to marry you. Like, I think understood, hopefully understood that you guys are going to support each other along the way. And it's okay to ask for emotional support from your person.
Right, absolutely. And I feel like I say this a lot too when I have clients talking about fathers that are overly critical, right? Like always pointing out what you could do better, what they never acknowledged, even what you did well. And I see this come out a lot in this idea of perfectionism, needing to be perfect, having a lot of self doubt, having a lot of, like just feeling that they're never good enough when it comes to the relationships or the work that they're doing as a result of some of these relationship dynamics that they had at the beginning with their
Yeah,
father.
I actually like the sabotaging when things feel too good. That comes up so often.
Oh my
Like, they're
gosh,
like,
yes.
I hear this all the time, right? And
Yep.
again, it's not our fault. Like, this is just things that we have to work through because life has happened to us. But I hear this a lot from my clients, which is, things are going too good. He's probably cheating on me. And it's like, girl, what? She's like, yeah, no, he bought me flowers. Like, he took me to dinner. He's compensated. Like, he's cheating on me and he feels guilty. And so when you start asking, like, okay, like, did something happen? Did you see something? Nope. Okay. Did he like get home late one day? Nope. Straight home from work. Like, so you start asking questions and you're like, so why do you feel this? And they're like, nope, just a feeling. And so that definitely comes from being let down time and time again, not just by dad, but like by the people that you love, right? Like, things will be going good and you bring your guard down and you feel that connection and that love, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, somebody disappears, dad disappears. Or again, with a dad that doesn't have good emotional regulation, everything is okay and calm, and all of a sudden dad is yelling and screaming and you don't know why. So yeah, you start our brains work in patterns. So we start thinking that when things are good, no, it's too good. Like, for sure, something bad is going to happen. Because that's actually the cycle of abuse. Now that I'm talking about it and thinking about it, things are good. There's a honeymoon period, and then things are bad. So we kind of start thinking in that way.
For sure. I had a client tell me like just the other day that her significant other brought her a coffee and she was like immediately on guard. Mind you, there was nothing going on in the relationship at this point that would put her on guard, but she was immediately on guard because like he did this nice thoughtful gesture for her that she didn't ask for, nothing. But she was like, what did he do? Is he like coming here? And she told me like what her thought process was, like, what's going on right now that he's bringing me a coffee? And it's like, but again, it's exactly what you said, right? That this repeated pattern in her past of having to rely on herself because not being able to rely on others, right? And this is where then we lead to this is the automatic thought process for her as a result.
Yeah, it's so crazy how our brains work in those patterns, and so unfortunate because we don't deserve to feel that way, right? Like, all that does is bring up constant anxiety, you're constantly in fight or flight, and then from being constantly anxious and on guard and like worried that something's going to happen, most of the time we have like a huge just dump after of emotions. So you're going from like stimulating your nervous system to feeling all sorts of crazy because of your daddy issues, and then feeling exhausted and having depression hit. And then that's when we were like, oh, I don't even care anymore. Whatever, if he cheats, he cheats. I can't deal with it.
True.
It's fine, right? And it's like, girl, no, it's not fine if he cheats. What are you talking about? Unless you guys are in an open relationship. Um, but we're talking a lot about women's views, right? Because we're women, but it works the same way with men. Like men will feel the same way in their relationships too. Like they'll feel like, oh, she's overcompensating, she's for sure cheating, I'm not enough for her, she's just gonna leave. So this is for both men and women. Like these thought patterns come up depending on the relationships that we've had in our lives.
And you know, another thing that I see so often, unfortunately, and this is both for my men and my women, is this constantly seeking external validation, seeking the validation from others. I'm sorry if anybody can hear like my children crying in the background because I can hear them. So I just want to preface that. I'm sorry. But constantly seeking external validation from others because, again, and every time that I go over this and process with them, it always channels back to this unmet need that they had when it came to their own parents, specifically their fathers, and seeking that validation from them that they never got. And then as they get older, that need hasn't gone away. It's still there. But then now what are they doing? They're seeking it out in their relationships, more than likely in their relationships with others. And half of the time it's like I'm then having to work with them, and that kind of is part of our next segment of like, how do we work on this? It's then kind of learning to reassure yourself, seeking your own personal validation instead of trying to rely on that
That's not
externally.
easy. It just reminded me of all the memes that are like, would you love me if I was a worm? I'm guilty of that, to be totally honest. Like sometimes I look at my husband Nick, I'm like, would you love me if like, I don't know, I make up the craziest things. I'm like not okay. I'm not okay. But you have those moments where you're like, like, you sure you love me? You sure you want this relationship? So I think it happens to all of us, even if there's no daddy issues. I for sure have
For
daddy
sure,
issues. That's
for
a whole
sure.
side conversation, but but it happens to all of us, right? We all have moments of insecurity. So this isn't to say like, if you have a moment where you need validation from your partner that like you must have abandonment and like all these issues come up. No, maybe you had like a really healthy relationship with all of your caregivers, and like it's normal to seek out um validation, because we all fluctuate, right? We have days where we feel really good about ourselves and our self-worth, and we have days where like it's a little harder, and that's the support you're looking for, right? Like your man should be able to be like, girl, of course I love you, and not be like, you're so annoying. But obviously, like, if you're asking every 2 seconds, that's different, right? Like validation sometimes is very different than like asking 24/7.
Right, yeah, absolutely, right? Like it's not like we're saying that looking for validation from your partner is wrong in any sense. Like you want to know and feel like your partner is there for you and validating you. But yes, when it is that constant thing, that constant battle, then or that constant need for reassurance, especially if there's something that's going wrong, especially if something is happening, and that automatic thought then turns to, oh well, do they hate me? Do they love me? Are they going to try to leave this relationship as a result? Then yeah, that's something that we have to work on, right? That's something that we have to really reflect on and see, like, where is this pattern coming from? Why am I feeling this way? And what can I do about
Yeah,
it?
absolutely. Okay, so Courtney, you were talking about like how we can actually like work on this. And I know finding validation within ourselves is actually a lot harder than it sounds. I mean, if you yeah, if you have tried, you know how difficult it is, where you can like, I have people all the time be like, I tried an affirmation, I don't believe it. I'm like, well, you can't go from like I hate myself and nobody's going to stick around. So, like, I'm the best and everybody wants to be around me. You're not going to believe it. You're going to be like, shut up. So,
Right.
what I
Yeah.
tell people is to find like at least a neutral ground at first and to kind of like work towards like seeing the positives within themselves. So, a neutral ground in a relationship, to me, involves a little bit of like, you got to walk through, okay, why do I feel this way? Do I feel like this person is going to abandon me? Do I feel like literally running out of this house because of something going on in my relationship or because of the things I've gone through in my childhood, maybe in past relationships, maybe with friendships? If the answer is past relationships and friendships, then take a deep breath and be like, all right, I'm actually okay in this relationship. I'm not feeling this because of what's happening now. I'm feeling this because of my past. And then you can work towards that neutral ground of, maybe even in that moment saying I am enough is too much, depending on like where you're at and like doing the work on yourself. So you can just say, he's here. Like he's here and he's showing me he's here. And that's what I know right now. And that's even like a step to me. It's just, I don't know if you agree, but it's not like a I'm enough. It's like, well, he is here. So it's not coming like from you. And then slowly but surely you work towards like why you are enough, right? Like the times that he has shown you love, like the times that you have seen in yourself, like your worth and why anybody would be lucky to be a part of your life and with you, whether it's like a friend, relationship, like a family member, whatever it is. But the goal is eventually to somewhat like yourself, right? That's like the goal of therapy. So it's getting there little by little, but also first building the insight into where those thoughts and emotions are coming from, so that you're not immediately saying, "Well, I'm feeling this way clearly because like nobody wants to be around me," versus like, "Well, I'm feeling this way because my dad just like didn't show me the love I deserved as like a little tiny baby."
No, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. For me, I think that in a lot of ways I do a lot of the same things that of what you're talking about. I For me it comes down to where is that person in their level of self-awareness when it comes to this whole dynamic, right? Like if they're coming to me and saying that I don't know why I keep on picking the same guy over and over, like I'm seeing the same thing over and over. I don't get why I'm doing it. I'm like, okay, maybe there's like a low level of self-awareness there. Let's start at the very beginning. So then maybe we're starting with childhood. We're seeing what's there. We're seeing what the relationship dynamics look like at the very beginning. Because again, this is what I remind all of everyone is that your childhood, although not everything relates directly back to childhood, although I think 90% of the time it does, this is your first eye-opening experience to like what the world looks like around you, what anger looks like, what sadness looks like, what happiness looks like, what relationship looks like. The people around you, your surroundings are your role model entry into the world, right? So you learn a lot at the very beginning just from that. So I look at what those relationships looks like. Then we move on to friendships and romantic relationships. So we can start to see what the patterns look like there. And then from there, you gain more of that insight. I don't even do affirmations until like closer to the point that they have a lot of insight, because exactly like you said, like they're not going to believe it. They're going to think that they're lying to themselves, or that it's not true for one reason or another, and all it does is reinforce the negative thoughts. So I don't even get into that until later on. The first step is exactly like you said, bringing in that insight and honing in. This is a lot of what we're seeing. And then from there, it's kind of like when we're talking more about the present, the thoughts and the experiences we're having in the present. What I like to point out a lot to my clients is that you talking right now? Are those your thoughts, or are those your father's thoughts? Or is it that your father speaking to you? Is that your father that's being critical to you right now? And then kind of giving them more of that awareness to attach what they saw in the past to the present and how it's impacting them and affecting them now in the present, so that they can be active in reflecting on the present. And then that's kind of like the next step for me, is like the active daily reflection. And then in our sessions, the weekly reflection, and then the monthly reflections, and being able to like really see how it is impacting them to then where we can finally get to the point that they can work on certain goals or like take steps to have better boundaries, and then praise themselves for their efforts, or to see that they can actually rely on themselves to do certain things, then we bring in the affirmations. If they're into, not everybody's into affirmations, but then we're bringing in the affirmations, because then that's more, for me, that's more like a maintenance. Then we're maintaining, what we're trying to implement and accomplish. So like that's for me, at least in therapy, how I like to work on working through those processes. I would say for anybody out there that either isn't ready for therapy, doesn't feel like they need it or want it, that's fine too. Like everybody is different. Not everybody, although I feel like everyone needs therapy at some point in their life, not everybody necessarily wants it or can, have the ability to actively get it. So I will say this for you. And then Melissa, if you have like any other advice or ideas that you can give people out there, I would say just start with checking in with yourself, seeing where your head is at when it comes to these situations that come up for you that we've been talking about here, whether it's the relationships you're in, seeking validation from others, needing certain things. Check in with yourself and see where your head is at. And then whether it's that you are able to identify what that emotion is, try to take it further. Like try to follow down the path of where that emotion is really coming from. Is that more about like the present and what's going on, or does that go further into somewhere else that maybe is closer to the past? But I would just say, just check in and see where those thoughts truly lead for you, and see if you can gain some insight that way.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you hit everything for sure. But it's just, it's interesting to think about how our childhood, I think you're right, 90%, right? Our childhood definitely impacts a lot of who we are. So if you find yourself struggling a little bit to try to understand yourself, try to just think back. Maybe you start remembering things, realizing things, and you're like, man, actually, this makes more sense than I thought it did. So there's something there. Okay, I think we like really touched up on everything, right? I feel like we covered all the possible daddy issues. Reach out to us for therapy if you want.
I mean, I don't think I don't think we covered everything. I mean, I feel like you could really go on and go really in depth with some of these things that people are seeing, but this isn't the place or time for that. We really just wanted to be able to give people the understanding, the knowledge that we hear you. We're always saying that we hear you, we understand you. You are not alone in how you are feeling. And sometimes it means discussing these things to even bring insight to like, oh wow, like I didn't even realize that I was doing that, right? Sometimes we need to see that we need to do things differently. We need to maybe set healthier boundaries that we didn't realize were not healthy boundaries to begin with. But I mean, whether it means, like nurturing our own self-talk, having more self-care, surrounding yourself with, people that are there for you in the ways that you need, or maybe the ways that even your father wasn't there for you. I don't know, right? But ultimately, what we're trying to say is that daddy issues are more than just a punchline. They're actual, real attachment wounds. They are things that shape your identity. They shape your emotional attachment to others, right? And while you didn't choose them, you can choose how you heal. So thank you for sticking with us.
I stand corrected. We just scratched the surface on daddy issues. So back to my original statement. Thanks for hanging out. And if you do decide that therapy is for you, I think everybody should be in therapy. But if you do decide therapy is for you and you want to talk about some of those daddy issues, Courtney and I, we're here for it. All right. Thanks, guys.
And again, be sure to check us out on our social media platforms, Strong Mind MH, all across the board. We'd love to hear from any of our listeners. If you want to give us some of your own personal insight, what you've experienced, if you want to give us ideas of what you would like to hear us talk about next, please let us know. All right. So again, thank you again for listening to Collectively Unhinged, and be sure to follow us to listen to our future episodes. Have a good day and stay safe.
Bye.